Do you have to relive trauma to heal? The short answer is no. In this video, I'm going to explain how acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, can support PTSD and complex PTSD by focusing on the present moment impact of trauma without making detailed trauma retelling the starting point. And at the end of this talk, I'll guide you through a brief 60-second practice you can use right away if you're living with trauma triggers. Hi, I'm Dr. Sheila Vidal. I provide ACT-led trauma-informed therapy for adults online across California and Virginia with limited in-person appointments in Folsom, California. In my work, I focus on helping adults build psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility is the ability to notice what shows up inside you and still choose actions that move you toward the life you want to live. If you've ever thought, I can't handle going back there, I don't want to think about that, let alone talk about it with a stranger, that makes sense. And for many adults, the fear is not only in the remembering, it's the fear of getting overwhelmed, shutting down, losing control, or feeling worse after processing or retelling traumatic memories. So today I'm making the case for why you don't have to retell your trauma story to start healing. I also want to clarify that the word healing means different things to different people in trauma-informed therapy. If healing to you means eliminating symptoms entirely, this may not be the right approach. But if you're tired of being guided by trauma-driven thoughts and emotions, and you see healing as rebuilding your life with more choice and flexibility, this approach might be a good fit. I'm going to talk about the patterns trauma can leave behind and how ACT helps you rebuild flexibility and choice. PTSD and complex PTSD are not only about what happened, they're also about what your nervous system learned to do after the event. A lot of people get stuck in what I call a trauma loop. 1, something or someone triggers you. 2, your body sounds the alarms. 3, your mind automatically creates stories of warning or caution. 4, you do what you can in the moment to get relief. That relief often comes from avoiding places or conversations, staying busy or overworking, shutting down emotionally, scanning for danger, people pleasing, numbing out with scrolling, substances, or any other distraction, and overthinking to feel in control. And here's the hard part. Avoidance often works in the short term. So your brain learns that helped, do it again. Over time, though, life gets smaller, not because you're not capable of doing more, but because your brain and your nervous system are doing what they're designed to do. They're trying to protect you. In ACT, a name for this pattern is experiential avoidance. Experiential avoidance is the urge to escape or control internal experiences like memories, emotions, body sensations, and thoughts. In my practice, I see the loop show up in many ways, from more obvious avoidance like substances or process addictions to subtler, higher functioning patterns such as intellectualization or dissociation. ACT is a process-based approach. That means we're not trying to debate your thoughts or force you to think positively. The goal is to build psychological flexibility. This matters in trauma work because healing is not only about symptom reduction, but it's also about restoring choice. Here's a shift that can be helpful. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this? ACT often asks, what happens if I fight this? And what does that fight cost? That question isn't meant to blame you. It's meant to help you see the pattern. So fear, anxiety, shame, or avoidance are not the only compass. The ACT Hexaflex applied to trauma. If you've seen the ACT Hexaflex, it includes 6 core processes. I'm going to walk you through them in plain language, specifically for trauma. Acceptance or willingness. This is learning to make room for sensations, emotions, and memories long enough to choose your next step. This is not approval. This is not about giving up. It's about making space for what's already here instead of fighting it. Present moment awareness. This is orienting you to right now. In this present moment, when your body and your mind try to pull you into the past or into the future. Sometimes it's as simple as noticing the room you're in, what you can see, what you can feel or hear, and what is stable or grounding in this moment. Cognitive diffusion is a process of noticing a thought, not as a command. A practical example is labeling what shows up for you in the mind or body. Instead of identifying with a thought or sensation as you or belonging to you, you can create some space from the distress by identifying it and labeling it before it hijacks your mind. When you notice unhelpful thoughts arise, you can say, that's a projection pattern. That's a worry loop. There's the judgmental mind. Or that's a survival response. As you become skilled at this exercise, you can use shorter labels to catch the unhelpful thoughts in advance before the mind spirals. Old learning, unhelpful story, autopilot, critical mind, worry loop. That shift interrupts the automatic response you're used to and offers more space for you to act with intention. The goal here is to notice and acknowledge the distressing thought or sensation instead of being defined by it. Self is context, also known as the observing self. Trauma can narrow your sense of self into a single story without consideration of contextual factors that were present at the time of the trauma. Self is context, or the observing self, is remembering that you're more than your symptoms, more than your trauma history, and more than what your mind says about the events. You are the one noticing all of these. You are the observer. Values clarify what matters. So fear, anxiety, shame, or avoidance are not the only compass. Values sound like directions, not destinations. Values questions include, what kind of person do I want to be, even when times are hard and I'm still healing? What do I want to move toward despite this pain? What do I want to stand for? And what motivates me to grow? Committed action. This is taking deliberate, values-guided steps that rebuild your life. This is what I mean when I ask my clients to get up, dress up, show up as best they can in any given moment, even in the presence of psychological pain that so often accompanies trauma. Committed action is taking the next workable step and not waiting for the perfect conditions to begin rebuilding your life after trauma. PTSD often includes intrusions or unwanted memories, avoidance, hypervigilance, sleep disruption, and feeling on edge. When people use the term complex PTSD, they're often describing PTSD symptoms plus patterns like chronic shame or harsh self-judgment, emotional shutdown or persistent mood swings, a negative self-concept, and compromised self-esteem, as well as relationship difficulty, disconnection, or even people-pleasing tendencies. For many people who have experienced complex traumas, the most painful part is not only the fear, it's the pain around identity and how it reshapes their sense of self. These types of thoughts sound like, I'm broken, or I'll never go back to the person I was before, or I don't deserve to feel better. ACT can be powerful here because it targets shame-based fusion with these kinds of thoughts, and it helps you unhook from painful stories and return to the person you want to be in your relationships, your work, and your daily life. Pacing and staying in your workable zone. A trauma-informed ACT approach prioritizes pacing. When your nervous system is outside its workable zone, your options shrink. That can look like overwhelm or panic, or it can look like numbness and shutdown. So the goal in therapy is not to push. The goal is capacity building. In practice, that can include grounding and orienting skills, noticing urges to escape, and choosing a smaller step in the direction of your values, or learning the early warning signs of overwhelm and practicing willingness in shorter increments. Many adults find ACT helpful because the therapy doesn't just focus on insight or on habituation so that you can become desensitized to fearful thoughts. ACT therapy for trauma prioritizes pacing, meets you exactly where you are, and offers individualized, doable skills that you can practice in real time. What ACT sessions can look like when trauma is in the room. A lot of people ask, so what would we actually do in ACT if trauma is part of my story? Instead of starting with, tell me everything that happened, we might start with, what's showing up this week? What triggers have you noticed? What does your body do when it gets activated? What do you do next to get relief? Or what has that behavioral pattern cost you? Then we practice skills to increase psychological flexibility, not as performance, as experiments. For example, practicing noticing and distancing from a repeated shame thought, or noticing a body sensation for 15 to 30 seconds without escaping or avoiding, identifying a values guided action for the week, or planning committed action in a way that your nervous system can tolerate. These practices aren't intended to force positive change. They're about restoring your choice. The 60-second practice I promised. Step 1, name the feeling or sensation. That's anxiety. That's shame. That's fear. Step 2, add cognitive diffusion to create space between you and your thought. I'm having the thought that I'm feeling really anxious right now. I'm having the thought that I'm so ashamed right now. Step 3, ask a values question. If fear, anxiety, shame, or avoidance weren't in charge for the next 10 minutes, what would I choose to do that matters? Step 4, take one workable step, not a big leap, a deliberate step you can actually do right now that's in line with your values. This approach is often a strong fit if avoidance has become automatic. You feel exhausted by fighting your mind or your body. Shame and self-judgment are a central part of your identity. Or you want a paced approach that respects your nervous system exactly where it is today. If you want a deeper explanation of everything we covered here today, I wrote a full blog post titled Act for Trauma, PTSD and Complex PTSD without reliving it. I'll link it below. And if you're in California or Virginia and you want to explore working together, I provide secure online therapy across both states with limited in-person appointments in Folsom, California. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video supported you today, I hope you'll check back in for more ACT-led, trauma-informed guidance with me, Dr. Sheila Vidal of Next Mission Recovery. I'll talk with you in the next video.